Welcome back to this week's episode of The Emily Show. Today, there's a lot of litigation going on in the Rust case, some of which I had a heads up to because I saw Jason Bowles talking about it over the weekend at CrimeCon. Hannah Gutierrez may be testifying at the Baldwin trial. More breaking news about Alec Baldwin, though, and a reality TV show, so you know we have to talk about that. And of course, I'm not going to leave you hanging on the 76 ethics charges being brought against Courthouse Becky, the clerk of court for the Murdaugh case out of South Carolina. We have a lot to talk about, y'all. So let's just get into today's Emily Show. Welcome to the Emily Show. I'm Emily D. Baker, the internet's go-to legal analyst and big fan of the cursey words. I've been a licensed attorney for over 17 years. I'm a former prosecutor, and I break down the legal side of pop culture and entertainment stories we can't stop talking about. We should just get into it. Let's go. Thank you to our sponsor, Factor. You guys know I'm incredibly neurodivergent, and one of the things I struggle with is eating regularly. And by the time I'm absolutely famished, I am more likely to grab something fast and unhealthy than I am to sit down and make myself something. So that is where Factor is a game changer for me, especially for midday meals. Factor has fresh, never frozen meals that are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. So no matter how busy you are, you always have something nutritious and great tasting to get you through the day. And you can pick options from either Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto. And they have over 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every week. You can also add on breakfast or dessert to stay fueled with easy, nutritious options. And you can pick your type of ingredient, and they have everything from filet mignon to shrimp and even blackened salmon. There are 6 menu preferences with Factor meals, so you can make sure that you're customizing your meals to your lifestyle, from protein-packed to meat-free to just well-balanced. Head to factormeals.com/EDB50 and use code EDB50 to get 50% off your first box and 20% off your next month. That's code EDB50 at factormeals.com/EDB50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. Let's get back to today's episode. To start off our discussion of all things Rust case, yes, over the weekend, I was at CrimeCon here in Nashville. I met so many of you amazing law nerds in person and had a chance to talk with a large number of our more legacy media friends, and that was fantastic. But I'll be talking more about that in other members' content because we're still in week 9,000 of the Karen Reed trial, and there's lots of litigation going on in Rust. And I haven't gotten to read all of the Courthouse Becky allegations in the ethics complaint, and I really want to. So we're going to zoom through some of the Baldwin litigation, but I'm fascinated by what's going on with the prosecution. And this litigation is going to continue to pick up speed until we get to trial in July on this case. It is not going to slow down. We're like a month out, right around a month out from Baldwin's trial, and it is going to be very busy in paper between now and that trial. So let's first talk about where this next story comes into play with all of that. From people.com, headline, Alec and Hilaria Baldwin announce reality show featuring all 7 of their kids, inviting you into our home. The actor and his wife and their 7 young kids are opening their doors for reality fans in 2025. So Alec Baldwin's becoming a family vlogger then. That's going to be interesting after this trial ends. The article goes on to say, Alec and Hilaria Baldwin are bringing their family of 9 to the small screen. On Tuesday, the 30 Rock alum and his wife announced their upcoming reality show, The Baldwins, on Instagram. Their video post gave a glimpse into the family dynamics the couple and their kids will share on TLC in 2025. The clip begins with Alec, 66, and Hilaria, 40, introducing themselves with a jesting joke about the sizable brood of 7 children. It has what looks like the cover of their show for TLC in that Instagram story. It goes on to say, quote, "We have an announcement to make," the Yoga Vita co-founder told the camera before she's cut off by a comical record scratch sound effect. "Oh, this one." Looking alarmed, Alec responded, "Good God, no," which prompted Hilaria to playfully reassure him, "No, definitely not. We're done having kids." The Instagram reel then shows the busy bunch in action running around at home and posing with their parents for a family photo. The Baldwins share 7 children, and then it lists the children by age and name, and then it talks about Baldwin's oldest, 28-year-old, Ireland, with his ex, Kim Basinger. Quote, "We're inviting you into our home to experience the ups and downs, the good, the bad, the wild, and the crazy," the Boss Baby star continued in the teaser as more family videos rolled. "Home is a place we love to be most." Then why would you bring cameras into it? The 50-second sneak peek concludes with the parents and their 7 Baldwinitos on the sofa shouting, "We are the Baldwins," for the cameras. Did you ever think we'd get to the point where Alec Baldwin just wanted to be the Kardashians? I didn't think so either. And it ends with, "And we're coming to TLC," Alec joked as his kids romped around on and off camera. "God help you all," he added with a smile. "Sir, you're going to trial. So I wonder if cameras are rolling now." It says people first learned of a Baldwin reality show in the works back in November when a source shared that Alec and Hilaria were pitching a family reality show that would give an inside look to their life. Remember the rumors that she was going to be on Real Housewives? I think the Real Housewives would ask her too many questions. When it's their own show, then they, not as many tough questions. They don't get asked nearly as many tough questions. Quote, "They're excited, but would only do it if it was an authentic portrayal of who they are as a family," the insider told People at the time. "The kids all have such fun personalities, and Hilaria and Alec know how much interest there is in their lives." Law nerds, please let me know how much interest there is. The source also shared that both parents were keen to give viewers a behind-the-scenes look at raising a big family. News of the Baldwins reality show comes after Alec was indicted by a New Mexico grand jury and recharged with involuntary manslaughter in connection with the fatal 2021 Rust shooting. What the article doesn't say that I'm going to add is of Helena Hutchins. It goes on to say the first criminal charges were brought against Alec were dropped in April 2023. I will add, at the request of his lawyers, according to prosecutorial filings. It goes on to say, according to New Mexico law, he faces up to 18 months in prison with the new charges, which Hannah Gutierrez is currently serving. It goes on to say in January, a source close to the family spoke to People about how Alec and Hilaria were handling the indictment. The insider shared that the pair found the news frustrating and very stressful. "It's stressful for Hilaria. It's frustrating for them both that Alec is being recharged." It goes on to say they knew there was a possibility there would be a new indictment. The source told People the back and forth is hard. I suppose it's easier than the grieving that Helena's child and husband go through, but I imagine, yes, that not knowing what's going to happen could be frustrating. However, when prosecution dismissed charges against Baldwin initially, it did seem that it was clear that depending on what came back in the reports from the FBI, that recharging was always considered unless something in the FBI showed that the gun had malfunctioned. And that's not what we saw in the testimony at Hannah Gutierrez's trial. So I don't know if we hope that cameras are rolling, but it seems like it's happening. Will cameras be following him to trial? I imagine, yes. I imagine that cameras will be following him to trial. I imagine that the Baldwin trial will have many series made about it on Netflix and Hulu and everywhere else. I imagine that this will be covered the same way we saw other celebrity trials be covered. I just hope that if they use any of my legal commentary, they actually ask permission this time. Netflix. Speaking of legal, let's get into all the filings that are going on in the Baldwin case. Let's take a look at this filing, which is the state's opposed motion for use immunity for Hannah Gutierrez. It was filed on June 3rd, 2024, but over the weekend, during the Rust panel at CrimeCon, Jason Bowles said very clearly that the state was trying to force Hannah Gutierrez to testify at Alec Baldwin's trial. And remember, in the sentencing memo, where the prosecution put in snippets of many of Hannah Gutierrez's jail calls, she had some very strong feelings about testifying against Baldwin and said she hoped he ended up in jail. Remember, the defense in this case, Baldwin's defense team put her on their witness list. And I will also remind you that there is a agreement between Baldwin's defense team and Gutierrez's defense team so that they can share information with one another regarding trial. That is something that both clients would have to have agreed to. And that was filed probably 3 weeks ago, maybe. So this is the state's opposed motion for use immunity for Hannah Gutierrez. This is the prosecution asking the court to grant a use immunity, and we'll talk about what use immunity is in a minute, for Hannah Gutierrez. The prosecution is asking the court to grant use immunity on the grounds as follows. 1, Ms. Gutierrez is listed on defendant Baldwin's witness list and on the state's witness list by proxy, as the state has reserved the right to call witnesses named by the defendant. Footnote, the state just filed an amended witness list with an addendum that added Hannah Gutierrez to the state's witness list. So now she's on both witness lists. But that happened like the day after this. Ms. Gutierrez submitted to a pretrial interview on May 14th, 2024, wherein she asserted her Fifth Amendment privilege to all substantive questions. So the state tried to interview Hannah on May 14th, and Hannah's like, yeah, nah. Here's a reminder. While the appeal is pending, Hannah's case is not final. She has a Fifth Amendment protection and cannot be forced to testify against herself. Any testimony she would give in court could potentially incriminate herself. Any conversation about her loading guns, caring for guns, what happened on set, all of that could potentially be used against her if her appeal is successful, if her conviction is overturned, and if she is retried. That's why the state is asking for use immunity. Presumably, it says defendant Baldwin named Gutierrez as a witness so his counsel can obtain potentially exculpatory information from Ms. Baldwin that is relevant to the issue of proximate cause. Remember, the proximate cause or the intervening cause is a central part of the jury instructions here. The jury can find that even if Baldwin pulled the trigger, if a proximate or intervening cause was the cause of Helena Hutchins' death, i.e. Hannah putting a live bullet in the gun, then they can find Baldwin not guilty because that other cause intervened and kind of cut off where he's responsible and the responsibility belongs to someone else. In Hannah's trial, that was argued as the medical personnel, the EMT on scene and then EMS after. The argument was that they did not treat Helena properly, and that was an intervening cause, and that didn't go very far in Hannah's trial. It goes on to say if Ms. Gutierrez is not granted use immunity, the defendant will likely attempt to have her previous statements admitted as exceptions to the rule against hearsay as statements against interest pursuant to 11804B3. Of course, in the federal rules, that would just be 804, as, again, statements against personal interest. The prosecution goes on to say this requires the defendant to demonstrate that Ms. Gutierrez is unavailable due to her assertion of the Fifth Amendment privilege. So the defense would call Hannah Gutierrez, they would transport her in from prison, she would take the stand, she would plead the Fifth, probably outside the presence of the jury, say that she's not testifying to anything substantive, and then his defense attorneys can say, well, we have the right to use her previous statements that were made against her own interest, and they would use clips or seek to use clips from her police interviews. I think the prosecution has read this situation correctly. It goes on to say that if Ms. Gutierrez were not compelled to testify by the court and her statements were to be admitted under 804, the state would be unable to cross-examine Gutierrez about her statements, and the state would also be unable to present testimony from Gutierrez that is inculpatory to Baldwin. So Baldwin would be allowed to use exculpatory information or information that could show that there was a proximate or intervening cause. But the state could not similarly use statements made by Hannah to inculpate Baldwin. Why? Baldwin has a Sixth Amendment privilege. This is the Constitution coming into play. Hannah's Fifth Amendment right means she doesn't have to testify against her own interest. Her appeal is still pending, so her case is not final. Baldwin has a Sixth Amendment right to confront and cross-examine witnesses. So Baldwin could use some of her statements, but the state could not use rebuttal statements. So the state is saying, look, the only way to do that is to grant use immunity. The prosecution goes on to say, upon information and belief, should the court grant use immunity to Ms. Gutierrez and order her to testify truthfully in the trial of defendant Baldwin, Gutierrez would testify that Mr. Baldwin was inattentive during the firearms training session that she conducted with him. Mr. Baldwin indicated an apparent willingness to participate in additional training the following day with his holster, but failed to do so. Ms. Gutierrez would testify to what her firearms training with Baldwin consisted of. She would testify that Baldwin was a producer and had the freedom to do whatever he wanted, and that the other producers, quote, had to reel him in all the time. That Baldwin would become upset and have emotional fits, that Baldwin was not supposed to be cocking the gun or pulling the trigger during rehearsal when the gun went off, that Baldwin would frequently rush her when she was loading or unloading weapons, and that there were 2 other actors on set that regularly conducted their own safety checks of their guns. Ms. Gutierrez would also likely testify that actors are not supposed to point their guns at crew members, and that she offered Baldwin an inert gun to rehearse with just before the shooting of Ms. Hutchins, but either Baldwin and or Halls demanded the real gun be provided. And from Hall's testimony, it seemed that that was Baldwin that demanded that. They go on to say that the court may grant the state's motion for use immunity if the court finds the testimony may be necessary to the public interest and that Ms. Gutierrez is likely to refuse to testify on the basis of her privilege against self-incrimination. The court could hold a hearing for this and say, hey, Hannah, come in. We're going to ask you on the stand with your lawyer if you're going to plead the fifth or not. It goes on to say that Ms. Gutierrez possesses information that is exculpatory to Mr. Baldwin and necessary to his defense, and she also possesses information that is inculpatory and would aid the state in its prosecution of Mr. Baldwin. The jury should hear all of the information Ms. Gutierrez has regarding Mr. Baldwin, both exculpatory and inculpatory, and counsel for both sides should be permitted to fully cross-examine Ms. Gutierrez. The state is not offering Ms. Gutierrez a benefit for her testimony against Baldwin. The grant of use immunity would only protect Gutierrez from her statements during the Baldwin trial being used against her should her appeal be successful, and the state would be unable to use any of her statements to pursue other future charges against Gutierrez based on her testimony. Use immunity means that she would have immunity from what she said at trial. So if Hannah's appeal is successful, and we'll talk about that another day, but if Hannah's appeal is successful, generally what happens is that the trial will be overturned, the conviction will be overturned, and a new trial is granted. CEG, the Harvey Weinstein New York case. The solution is new trial. If Hannah has to go to another trial, the state cannot use what she says in the Baldwin trial against her. And the state cannot use anything she says in the Baldwin trial to pursue other charges against her. So if she testifies to other things that are potentially illegal, the state cannot use that against her. So it would, for that use, it's not total immunity from all things ever, but for that use, for testifying at trial, she cannot be prosecuted, she cannot have it used against her, and she is required to testify truthfully. That is all. And there are some states where there's case law about whether you get use immunity and then commit perjury if you're allowed to be tried for the perjury, because the use immunity might not protect you from the perjury. But that's a whole separate sideshow that we're not getting in today, just asterisks on that. The reason she can assert the Fifth Amendment after being convicted and sentenced is because her appeal is still outstanding. If you're going, well, Emily, couldn't the prosecution just wait till her appeal is done? No, Baldwin did not waive time. So Baldwin's trial has to go forward now because Baldwin also has constitutional rights. And so we're seeing the rights of the two different defendants kind of bumping up against each other. Because if the defense gets to just use clips of Hannah, the prosecution can't rebut it with other clips because of Baldwin's right to confront and cross-examine witnesses. And Hannah can't be forced to testify and put herself at risk because her appeal is still outstanding. I think because of all of that, it's likely that the court will either say none of this is being used or she will get use immunity. Those are really the two options that I see. I don't know if it would be satisfactory to the parties for the court to say if any segment of her police interviews is used, then the entire segment is used. It could be a potential. But the court gets to decide if Hannah is granted use immunity. In a lot of jurisdictions, this is a power of the prosecution. The prosecution can grant use immunity and then force someone to testify, but the prosecution here is trying to force Hannah to testify by the court granting her use immunity. The motion goes on to conclude using New Mexico statute saying, quote, Under a grant of use immunity, the prosecution promises only to refrain from using the testimony in any future prosecution, as well as any evidence derived from the protected testimony. Under use immunity, the prosecution may still proceed with charges against the witness so long as it does not use or rely on the witness's testimony or its fruits. It says, moreover, pursuant to New Mexico Rules 11-413, the state would be free to prosecute Ms. Gutierrez for perjury should she perjure herself during her testimony in the Baldwin trial. Emily, keep reading. It's right there. Keep reading. Defense counsel Sarah Clark opposes this motion. The defendant's opposition to this motion is a clear indicator that the defendant intends that only exculpatory testimony from Ms. Gutierrez be presented to the jury and that the exculpatory testimony take place in a vacuum. The jury should hear all relevant testimony from Ms. Gutierrez. So that's Carrie Morrissey's motion. They've also asked for an expedited hearing for this. A hearing date has not yet been set, but when it is, I will be covering it at some point. You're going to need the Lawnerd app for me to cover it because if we're still in the Karen Read trial, I don't know when I'm going to be able to cover it, but I absolutely will keep you up to date with what happens with that the same way I did when the court denied Baldwin's motion to dismiss. Keeping in mind, Baldwin has made another motion to dismiss based on failure to state a claim and destruction of evidence. That has not gone to a hearing yet. So Baldwin has 2 additional motions to dismiss, and now the defense has filed motions because they are trying to exclude witnesses, and the defense is, again, very frustrated with the prosecution. This was filed on June 3rd, 2024. The defense says in their factual background, quote, on February 26th, the court filed the scheduling order in this matter, instructing the parties the final trial witness lists must be filed by May 6, 2024, and no additional witnesses could be added after the deadline, absent the court finding good cause. In accordance with court orders on May 6th, the defendant filed their witness list, the state filed theirs. On May 6th, the state filed a motion seeking to exclude 9 witnesses from the defendant's witness list. On May 21st, the defense filed its opposition to the state's motion. On May 31st, after the conclusion of pretrial interviews of 2 of the witnesses subject to the state's motion, and after the close of business, the state served the defendant with its reply in support of the state's motion, maintaining that the same 9 defendants' witnesses should be excluded from the trial. In an effort to streamline the issues before this court as a result of the state's motion, and in its reliance on the state's continued request to exclude all 9 of the witnesses listed on defendant's May 6 disclosure, the defense made a good faith effort to reduce the number of its witnesses by a significant margin and consented to the relief sought by the state as to 5 of them. 5 of the 9. On Sunday, June 2nd at 6:28 p.m., the defense filed and served a notice of withdrawal of 11 defense witnesses. Among the 11 witnesses were 5 that, at least as of the 48 hours prior, the state had requested to exclude in its May 6 motion and May 31st reply. With respect to the 5 witnesses that the state had requested to exclude, the defense understood that by consenting to the state's request of relief, those witnesses would be removed from the case by operation of law, and there would only be an outstanding issue for the court as to the remaining 4. In accordance with its withdrawal and in its reliance on the state's position, the defense withdrew 3 of its subpoenas, promptly notifying the witnesses of the same. Hey, you're no longer needed. This included 2 witnesses scheduled for pretrial interviews on Monday, June 3rd. Can you feel where this is going? On June 3rd at 9:49 a.m., the state filed a notice purporting to withdraw its motion to exclude certain witnesses. Contemporaneously, the state submitted an amended witness list, adding 2 of the witnesses it sought to exclude in the state's motion and reply, as well as Hannah Gutierrez. That was on Monday. The state failed to provide any good faith basis for its actions. Underside counsel then requested that the court set a pretrial conference to determine what unresolved issues remain before the court in light of the state's action. The state, through Special Prosecutor Morrissey, promptly responded opposing this request. Because of the state's motion, the issue of the witness exclusion was the subject of extensive briefing for nearly a month. A court order excluding 5 defense witnesses the state had sought to exclude, and the exclusion of which the defense had consented to, is appropriate and necessary due to the fast approaching trial and the state's ongoing unprofessional gamesmanship. Defense counsel respectfully requests such an order. So now the defense is arguing judicial estoppel. Basically, you don't get to have it both ways because you can't argue one thing and then argue against it. So their argument under judicial estoppel is that the state assumed the position that the 9 witnesses should be excluded, and they obtained the relief they sought. Then the state added witnesses that they had sought to exclude, which is inconsistent with their prior argument in court. So you can't flip-flop. Third, the defense acquiesced to the state's former position when the defense consented to the exclusion of the witnesses listed above, and the state's blatant change of position has prejudiced the defense in that they now have released a number of witnesses from subpoenas with only 2 days remaining before the expiration of the court-ordered pretrial interview deadline, which does prejudice the defense. They had those interviews set for Monday, June 3rd, and the state withdrew it and then added those witnesses to their own witness list before the interviews were done. So no, I think the state's going to grant this. I think the court is going to grant this motion and exclude those witnesses, no matter what the state wants. In its notice of withdrawal of defense witnesses, defendant agreed to withdraw 5 of the 9 witnesses identified by the state. Further, in an effort to streamline this case for all parties as trial approaches, the defense removed 6 additional witnesses from its witness list that it does not intend to call at trial. And then they named them. The defense clearly made strategic moves in reliance on the state's former position and has been prejudiced as a result of the state's change of position. These withdrawals were made as a group for a number of reasons, and to articulate the prejudice further would require the defense to reveal additional strategy to the state. So, the defense is very upset that the prosecution said, hey, we want these 9 witnesses to not be included at trial. And then the state went, just kidding, it's fine. And then the state went, oh, and we're adding them to our witness list. It's all good. This might get granted. Those witnesses might be excluded. We are too close to trial for this kind of stuff. And the court, I think, is not going to be friendly to it. There's a footnote that I missed. And you know I love a footnote. All the good stuff's in the footnote. And if you're in law school, the professors test from the footnotes. Footnote 1, the state has removed no witnesses, even though it is patently unreasonable for the state to have more than 45 witnesses in an 8-day trial. Oh, this trial's not going to be 8 days, buddy. That's adorable. Y'all think this is going to last 8 days? Because we're 50 witnesses in Karen Reed, and we're in like week 6 million. So yes, the state is probably not going to call 45 witnesses, but this trial's not going to take 8 days. Come on now. Morrissey, this shit's not cool. The gamesmanship is fuckery to me. And Morrissey is probably going to say to the court, but we said on our witness list, we reserved all the witnesses the defense was going to call. So we can add Hannah because the defense had her on their list. But as to the witnesses that the state explicitly sought to have excluded, I don't think you get the same argument. We'll see what the state does, but this is going to get worse. We've already seen the defense call the prosecution's argument a jeremiad against defendant Baldwin, amongst other things. We have seen their motion for sanctions. We have seen their motions to recuse the prosecution's office. There's more going on with that is going to be coming up for hearing. This case is going to be incredibly busy in litigation between now and the July 9th trial date. So y'all, I'm telling you, if we are not done with Karen Reed by 4th of July week, I'm going to lose my mind. And I'm really worried that we're not going to be. But that's okay. Let's run away to familiar ground together, shall we? It's time to zoom back to the fine state of South Carolina. Thank you to today's sponsor, OneSkin. OneSkin keeps your skincare routine simple. And you know how I feel about products that make my life easier. Not everyone has time for a complex multi-step skincare routine, and that's where OneSkin comes in. Their topical supplements are formulated to smooth your skin with natural antioxidants, plus they are gentle enough to use every day, even if you have sensitive skin. I appreciate that the products are backed by extensive lab and clinical research, and OneSkin is founded by an all-woman team of scientists. Their topical supplements are the easiest way to keep your skin healthy and hydrated without the harsh ingredients or irritation often found in other skincare products. OneSkin is the world's first skin longevity company. By focusing on the cellular aspects of aging, OneSkin keeps your skin looking and acting younger for longer. So if you are ready for a simple but powerful skincare routine, you can try OneSkin for 15% off at oneskin.co using code LAWNERD. So again, you can get 15% off at oneskin.co with code LAWNERD. After your purchase, they're going to ask how you found them, and go ahead and let them know you found them on The Emily Show. Let's get back to today's episode. Did y'all think we were done with Courthouse Becky? Because I knew that we weren't. But did you think that we were? Were you hoping that we were? Well, buckle up, because we have a lot to go through when it comes to the ethics complaints against Courthouse Becky. There are 2 ethics complaints against her. They are both set for hearing on December 19th at 9:30 a.m. You're going to ask as I go through this, but aren't some of these things crimey? Yes, dear Law Nerd, it is crimey. And we have heard from multiple publications that all of this has been forwarded to the state AG. I have had people tell me that they do not believe the state AG is going to act on this in any way before December. So we will see what happens, but we're going to go through the ethics complaints. Again, these are ethics complaints. These are not criminal filings yet. Could some of them be? Yes, some of them could be. So there are 2 complaints. This is the author Simmons complaint. It has the notice of hearing. Count 1 is the use or disclosure of confidential information for financial gain. And then it lists the code section and says that Becky Hill, Beckaboo XOXO, former Colton County Clerk of Court, provided an individual with whom she was associated confidential information in the form of a photograph. Emily, don't sing. Don't sing, Emily, don't sing. Look at this photograph. Stop it. Provided an individual with whom she associated confidential information in the form of a photograph of an inmate in the Colton County Courthouse holding cell to promote the sale of a book. Y'all know what photo that is. That is the photo that was provided to the photographer for the Behind the Doors of Justice book, Becky Hill's book, with her co-author. And the photograph was Murdaugh laying in a cell with a book on his chest, waiting for the verdict to come in. And that was all over Facebook in the groups about the book. Count 2, use of official position for financial gain. Becky Hill, former Clerk of Court, filmed a promotional segment with the Walterboro Chamber of Commerce president for her book in her office at the Colton County Courthouse. So again, using your official position for financial gain. And then it goes on and notifies her of her rights, including her right to counsel. We're not going to go through that because we're going to go to the much longer complaint that has many, many more than 2 counts. So let's do that now. Again, the hearing date is that same day, Thursday, December 19th at 9:30 a.m. Count 1, use of official position for financial gain. Becky Hill, former, I'm not going to keep saying it. We all know who Becky Boo is, don't we? Courthouse Becky knowingly used her official position to direct a bonus to herself in the amount of $2,000 in September of 2021 from IVD child support funds in violation, and it lists the code section. So diverting money that was going to child support funds to herself as a bonus. So taxpayers of South Carolina, your clerk of court was just diverting those funds to herself. Count 2, use of official position for financial gain. Becky Hill used her position to direct a bonus to herself in the amount of $380.10 in March of 2022 from the same child support funds. Count 3, use of position for financial gain. Becky Hill used her position to direct a bonus to herself in the amount of $2,500 in September 2022 from the child support funds. Count 4, use of official position for financial gain. She did use her official position to direct a bonus to herself in the amount of $2,500 in March of 2023 from the child support funds. Count 5, same. Becky Hill used her position to divert a bonus to herself in the amount of $2,500 in October of 2023 from guess where? The child support funds. Count 6, same charge. Becky Hill used her position to negotiate the use of the courthouse and an interview in exchange for the promotion of her book, Behind the Doors of Justice. Count 7, use of official position for financial gain for business with or which is associated. Becky Hill used her official position to authorize issuance of a check in the amount of $150 to Community Innovations, a business with which she is associated. Count 8, same charge. Becky Hill authorized the check of the amount of $600 to Community Innovations, a business with which she is associated. You can't have an official position and then hire your own company. Becca Boo, that's embezzlement, essentially. Count 9, use or disclosure of confidential information for financial gain. Becky Hill provided an individual with whom she is associated confidential information in the form of a photograph of an inmate in the Colton County Courthouse holding cell to promote the sale of a book, her book, Behind the Doors of Justice. Count 10. I mean, she's going to be behind something at some point. This is just the ethics complaints. We're not at criminal complaint yet. But these actions, if proven, are in the territory of criminal behavior. Becky Hill used her office to direct payment in the amount of $110.50 drawn on check number 6377, directed to purchase items including but not limited to meals for Clerk of Court employees in violation of Section 813-700 for everyone who's had to use their own funds to purchase work meals, purchase supplies for your classroom, or what have you. Clerk of Court Hill was just taking that from the taxpayers, it's alleged. Use of official position for financial gain, count 11. Becky Hill used her official position to direct payment in the amount of $113.28 for check number 6381. Hill directed that she be reimbursed, so this money goes back to her, for the purchase of items including but not limited to food and gifts for her employees, noted as Easter goodies. Every time I bought things for court staff or office staff at the DA's office, I paid for it myself. You don't get to use taxpayer funds to buy Easter goodies, Becky Boo. It doesn't matter that it's $113. It's not your money. Count 12, same charge, that she used $201.30 from check 6385 to reimburse her for the purchase of items including gifts for Clerk of Court employees, noted as Mother's Day gifts. If you want to buy everybody something cute, you got to pay for it yourself. I'm going to stop saying that. Count 13, same count, amount of $180, check 6385, to reimburse her for the purchase of items including Mother's Day gift card to the staff. Count 14, that she used her position to use $53 out of that same check 6385 to reimburse her for purchasing Mother's Day gifts, staff courthouse ladies. Count 15, check 6386, next check, $151.95. Hill reimbursed herself for the purchase of items including, quote, paint samples, fruit and snacks for FC and CP Judge, lunch for clerk, CRLC CP clerks FC Wall. So she's again reimbursing herself. $60 in count 16 from check 6394, where she was directing that she be reimbursed for the purchase of items including but not limited to meals for herself and clerk of court employees and court personnel. Count 17, use of official position for financial gain. We're still there. Check number 6393 in the amount of $244.49. She's alleged to have used money noted as birthday gifts and meals for family members. The taxpayers aren't buying birthday gifts for your family. Count 18, same charge. Check number 6404, alleged that she took $117.14 to reimburse herself for the purchase of items, including meals for herself and employees of the solicitor's office. The prosecutors. Buying meals for the prosecutors. Count 19, check number 5141, the amount of $51.80 that Hill was directing that she be reimbursed for the purchase of items, including gifts to clerk of court employees. Count 20. And again, some of these purchases might fly in a private business. But when you are a government employee using taxpayer funds, this doesn't fly. Private companies might have funds for holiday parties or what have you, but you are a government employee. That doesn't exist. Count 20, check 6426, $95.26, reimbursing herself for items including but not limited to birthday gifts and supplies, including Smirnoff Ice for the clerk of court employees. If you're buying booze for a county party, A, not on county property, and B, your own money. Count 21, check 5149, the amount of $137.93 to reimburse her for the purchase of lunch for herself and others. Count 22, check 5150 for the amount of $306.64, reimbursing her for meals for herself and employees of the solicitor's office, as well as Valentine's Day gifts for the clerk of court employees. Count 23, check 5153, the amount of $91.96 to reimburse her for the purchase of items including paint and supplies. Count 24, check number 6451, the amount of $131.53, reimbursing her for the purchase of items including meals for herself and clerk of court employees. Count 25, check 5155, the amount of $74.88, reimbursement for the purchase of office supplies. Look, there probably is a fund for office supplies, but it seems like they are alleging she did not do that the right way. I mean, there's probably forms you have to fill out to request them. Count 26, check number 6460, the amount of $100.46, reimbursement for lunch for herself and court employees. Quote, B-Day lunch with staff. That's the note. Quote, B-Day lunch with /staff or W/staff. Count 27, check number 6460, the amount of $97.19 to reimburse herself for the purchase of meals for herself and employees, including floral items and assorted beverages. Count 28, check 6462, $115.20 to reimburse meals for herself and guests. Count number 29, check 6462, $69.87, reimbursement for lunch. Count 30, check 6474, $131.84, reimburse her for purchasing lunch for courtroom staff and jury, as well as gifts for court personnel. Look, if the jury is getting lunch in a trial, imagine which one it is, there are processes to go through. You don't personally reimburse yourself. What? Count 31, check number 6473, the amount of $256.57, reimbursing herself for snacks, supplies, and meals. Look, I have friends that are judges. Do you know how their jury room gets stacked with snacks? The stacks of snacks? Because they go to Costco and buy them. Granted, judges are going to make more than the clerk of court, but maybe the clerk of court shouldn't be choosing to do these things if she is not going to pay for it. This does not come from taxpayer funds unless it goes through approved channels. And approved channels, I would imagine, would say no. Count 32, check number 6474, the amount of $89.47. Hill directed that she be reimbursed for purchasing items, including Mother's Day gifts for the employees. Has your work ever given you a Mother's Day gift? Let me know. I'm curious. I wonder if she included herself in that too. Count 33, check number 6475, the amount of $82.17, reimbursement for snacks and supplies for court personnel. Count 34, check number 5163, $400 reimbursing her for gifts for the clerk of court employees. How many gifts were these people getting? Count 35, check number 6483, $81. Reimbursement for meals for herself and her staff. Count 36, check number 6483, $95.48. Meals for herself and court personnel. Count 37, check 6482, $66.54 for gifts for herself and court employees. And this goes on and on. Count 38 is for meals to herself. Count 39 is for meals to herself and gifts for court employees. Count 40 is gifts for employees. Count 41 is for courthouse supplies. Count 42 is meals for herself and a guest. Count 43 is meals for herself and a vendor. You're not in a field where you are getting to take vendors out for a business lunch on the taxpayer's dime. That is public corruption. Count 44, office decorations. Count 45, office decorations. Count 46, meals for herself and employees. Count 47, office cooler and decorations. Count 48, going away lunch for an employee of the solicitor's office. You want to know how that shit went? When I was a public servant, if you got a going away lunch, generally the other DAs would pitch in for it. Sometimes the court staff would pitch in for it, which most of us ask them not to do. But that would generally come from the judge or the judges in the courthouse. But generally, the office would pitch in money, or the DAs in the office would pitch in money to do these things. I've never even heard of a clerk of court using taxpayer funds to host a going away lunch for one of the prosecutors. But lest I leave out that going away party for an employee of the solicitor's office included meals, appetizers, soft drinks, Jägermeister, and limoncello. Count 49, $600 to reimburse her for picnic tables. Count 50, $66 to reimburse her for meals. Count 51, $95 to reimburse her for food for the jurors and court personnel. Again, there are procedures wherein you go up the chain of command and these things are handled. You don't get to just write a check to reimburse yourself. If you've paid for it directly, then you're out that money. Count 52, Valentine's Day gifts to jurors and clerk of court employees. To jurors. Count 53, food for court personnel. Count 54, meals for employees. Count 55, brunch snacks for the clerk employees. Count 56, gifts for the employees. Count 57, office furniture. Count 58, meals and gifts for court employees and court personnel. Count 59, personal meals for her. Count 60, $76 to reimburse her for gifts for court personnel, as well as dog food, dog bones, and a dog bed. Is it for Bubba? Because if it's for Bubba, a bunch of us would have just pitched in. If we're buying Bubba dog food, dog bones, and a dog bed, like a GoFundMe would have worked. You don't have to take taxpayer money. Also, it's not on you. Also, is this for your own dog? Are the taxpayers paying for your dog food? Count 61, personal meals. Count 62, personal meals and gifts. Count 63, personal meals noted as reimbursed for Lori 50th birthday. Count 64, reimbursement for candy, tea, and lemonade for Lori's 50th birthday. Happy birthday, Lori. I'm sure you didn't expect that the taxpayers were paying for it. Count 65, meals for herself and employees of the Attorney General's office. Not the solicitors, the Attorney General's office. Want to bet that was during trial? It doesn't say the date, but I have to wonder if it was. That's my pondering. Count 66, reimbursement. It says, quote, Father's Day for guys. Well, at least we've gotten Mother's Day and Father's Day, but the taxpayer shouldn't be footing the bill. Count 67, personal meals and court personnel. Count 68, meals for herself and the clerk's office employees. Count 69, meals for herself and the clerk's office employees. Count 70, gifts for her clerk staff employees. Count 71, gifts for the clerk employees. Count 72, cleaning supplies. The county will do that if you follow the chain of command. But if you just go buy it, then that is a gift that you are donating to your office. Count 73, office decorations, $183.25. Was she trying to be the party planning committee? Yeah. Wanted to be the whole ass party planning committee. Count 74, reimbursement for the purchases of items including office decorations and supplies. And then it goes on to leave her the note that she has the right to be represented by counsel. So that is 74 counts in this one and 2 in the other. 2 different ethics complaints using extensively taxpayer funds in her office. I imagine that this is not going to be the end of everything that we will see, but where there are ethics complaints, I will not be surprised to see abuse of office, criminal charges, and or embezzlement criminal charges. These things run afoul of public integrity and the office that you serve. And at the end of the day, it is theft. Again, if it's proven. But they've got all the check numbers in here. So when it comes to paper cases, generally the checks don't lie. And what you don't get to do with public funds is reimburse yourself for Lori's birthday or just pay yourself bonuses. All of the media outlets that have totaled this up, it is over $20,000 of taxpayer funds in these allegations. I wonder if they're limited in time due to the statute of limitations or because she was only really in office for like 3.5 years before she resigned. She wasn't even clerk of court for a full term. Isn't that wild? But we also know that her co-author, Neil Gordon, sat down with the Ethics Commission, and it seems from news reports, and I did not ask him when I met him at CrimeCon, though maybe I should have. It seems from news reports that he has also sat down with law enforcement to talk about his experience with Becky Hill. But my experience getting to meet her co-author and having a chat with him, I will talk about at another time because this is the podcast. So if you're interested in that, stay tuned. As a lot of you know, I record the podcast behind the scenes with our incredible members on YouTube and in the Law Nerd app. And one of our members, Raina Clark, just said, behind the bars of justice. We're going to see if Becky Hill is learning that the snacks she's going to be getting are beef sticks anytime soon. But this kind of behavior really does piss me off. It is taxpayer funds. It is not your personal piggy bank. A huge thank you to today's sponsor, Shopify. Not only does Shopify run the Law Nerd shop, but also so many of your favorites across the internet, whether you're buying your favorite nail polish or picking up something from Brooklinen or Allbirds. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business, from just getting started to your first sale to moving past 1 million orders. Shopify is there to help you grow every step of the way. And did you know that Shopify actually has little shopping bag Shopify awards? They're kind of like the YouTube creator play buttons. They're super cute. I cannot wait to earn one. So no matter what you're selling, Shopify helps you turn shoppers into buyers with the internet's best converting checkout. It's no wonder Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the United States. Plus, if you ever get stuck, Shopify's award-winning customer service is there to help, because businesses that grow, grow with Shopify. So no matter what you are looking to sell online or in person, give Shopify a try today. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/lawnerd. Remember, that's all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/lawnerd now to grow your business no matter what stage you're in. And you'll start hearing this sound soon. Let's get back to today's episode. So, Law Nerds, thank you for being here. Thank you for being a Law Nerd. May your Wi-Fi be strong. May your toilet paper be plentiful. May your bidet be lovely. May your families be well, and may the odds be ever in your favor. I will talk to you in the next one. You can stay up to date with everything I'm covering on our free iOS and Android app at lawnerdapp.com, or search your app store for Law Nerd. And you can also follow me on social media at the Emily D. Baker. Remember, I stream on YouTube on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I recap all of that for you in quick bits on Monday. And of course, the Emily Show drops on Wednesdays. Thanks for being a Law Nerd.